can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. You were all unfortunately stuck with me tonight. Actually, if you show up on any Tuesday, you're pretty much stuck with me. So I appreciate you all being here. Why show up here? It's a question I like to ask. But why show up? Balance, which would mean you are what?
Completely off balance.
Completely off, just not even off balance, completely off balance. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate the honesty. You look pretty settled.
Sometimes.
I mean, you're sitting,
better than others.
right? Would you say some days better than others? Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing. What else? Why show up here? Yeah. Community, definitely. Yeah.
Support and encouragement.
Support and encouragement with or for what?
Lots of things.
I mean, we only have an hour, so.
Just for me, like just continuing meditation practice.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I saw a hand, I think, somewhere. Natalie.
Sanctuary.
Sanctuary. Yep.
Insights.
Insights into.
Since I'm new to meditation and Buddhism, the little tidbits that I learned are interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing. What else? Anyone? Yeah.
Direction and guidance.
Direction and guidance. You don't even know me, do you?
No. Probably can guide me a lot better than myself.
Well, for those who didn't hear him, he said he can probably guide me a lot better than myself. Just wanted to, the cheap seats, want to make sure you heard that. It's kind of like you're driving, you get off the freeway, and isn't it funny how we will ask complete strangers for directions? Actually, we don't do that anymore because we have phones, pretty much. But you've all seen movies. You can remember that Siri, right? Even that. I mean, we're asking Siri. We're asking Siri how to get us places. So, yeah, it's interesting. The last thing. Was anyone else want to share before I was going to share one more thing? Yeah, go ahead.
The energy of the community.
Oh, welcome back. It's been 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see anyone for 16 months, so don't feel bad. It's interesting because the last thing the Buddha said before he died, right? He taught for 45 years, and at 80 he died. And the last thing he said was, this isn't really going to help you much here, but I'll tell you anyways. They were all worried about who was going to teach them, all his disciples. And, he said, I've been teaching you for 45 years. I mean, how much more do I need to tell you? He said, be enlightened to yourself and strive on with diligence. And I've always found that as one of the most profound teachings, because if you have a really wise person who teaches for 45 years, and then there he is, or there they are at the moment of death, and they're going to leave their, folks with one final thing. And he says, be enlightened to yourself, right? In other words, at some point in time, we got to stop asking Siri for directions, But what I heard a couple of you say with sanctuary and community and, support is that what we're really looking for is people, right, that you can surround yourself with that will encourage, inspire, motivate you to put into practice all of these things that you learn. So if Siri or the, random person at a gas station 20 years ago gave you directions, you still have to get behind that wheel and drive, right? No matter what Siri tells you, if you don't step on the gas and turn the steering wheel, you're not going anywhere. And so it's for me, and that's when we take refuge in the Sangha. It's the last thing, the Buddha, the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. We take refuge, safety, comfort, protection in that community, because that's really, I think, the most important part of the triple gem, which is without that, it's going to be really hard to motivate on our own to live a kind, peaceful, gentle life every moment. Right? That's the challenge. And so we are really kind of on our own. Not kind of, you are on your own. But the practice is, can you look at the Dharma, the teachings, and put that into your life? It's like running the college group and for the last 5 years, and I'll tell the parents, look, I know what they're doing for an hour and a half or 2 hours twice a week, but the moment they walk out that door, they're on their own. And so it's the same thing for all of us, that we can kind of listen to these teachings. We can hear about being kind and gentle and compassionate and moral and all these things, but as soon as you walk out that door, that world out there is really not telling you to do all of these things so much. So the reminders are important. But yeah, so I'll do my best to not completely ruin you. All right, so with that, we'll do a meditation practice. There's a couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You will not float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit and breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. Okay, this is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture. If you are on the cushions, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed, hands can be on the knees or in the lap. If you're on a chair or bench, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight. Relaxing the shoulders. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. It just means your leg hurts or you have an itch. So simple, gentle movements and then back to stillness. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And most important, don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, we settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Going throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds. These are not distractions, not disruptions. Simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to your stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. with the body still, rested. The speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, or still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where we come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen and you react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, give a mask. Still. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control everything around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reactions to the world around us, life gets simpler. And all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful. Y'all probably have a lot of stuff to do. Potentially. That list is probably still there. The question is, how do we respond to it? How do we interact on a day-to-day basis with people and places and things? And that's really what this practice is about. It's funny because, I don't know, probably 5 minutes, give or take, into my meditation, I stopped playing scenarios of pulling over and asking people for directions at the gas station through my head. Anyone else have that going on in your head for the first couple of minutes? It was in my head for a while. And it was like, okay, there's a gas station, back to the breath. There's a gas station, back to the breath. It took me about 5 minutes until the gas station scenario went away. I just couldn't. It's funny because I've been doing this a long time. And I don't know why it never hit me before that we really will ask strangers, we'll ask Siri, like for some reason this just stuck with me. We will ask complete strangers or some little computer thing on your phone for directions and guidance, right? And we will follow it. I mean, have you ever put in like Google Maps directions and then completely went a different way? I mean, no, I know we all have, I get it. I don't mean like intentionally, but we follow these things because they tell us where to go, right? We're asking for directions and we follow it, usually. I mean, you probably don't argue with Google Maps, do you? Or Siri? Sometimes. Again, I love the honesty, right? But then when we look at teachings, practices, meditation, guidance, whatever we're getting that from, we are not sure if we want to do it or not. That's the challenge. There's so much wisdom out there, not just within Buddhism, but in so many practices and ways of life. And the real question is, again, when do we wake up and realize, you know what, I'm just tired of suffering. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of being stressed. I'm tired of being anxious. I'm tired of not taking care of mental, emotional health. When do we reach a point where we say, I'm just tired of living that way? And that's where the diligence comes in. That's where the Buddha said, strive on with diligence. There's something that has to kind of spark within each person. And that's different for everybody. To where one eventually says, I'm just tired of living this way. And that becomes the motivating factor, or a motivating factor, to really be diligent. Years ago, a guy in prison said, nothing changes if nothing changes. And it was like the simplest thing I'd ever heard. And it is also one of the most profound things I've ever heard. So, I was volunteering, not doing time, but even if I was, that was okay too. I just like to clarify that for anyone who's wondering what I was in prison for. Were you wondering it?
I knew something for a moment.
What's that?
For a second, I thought I knew.
Oh, yeah,
Thanks for clarifying.
for sure. Yeah. So I'll stop there and open up to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. I always really prefer to just address questions that are on your mind. and use that for the remainder of our time. And to our millions of YouTube followers, welcome. Glad you're here. It's not really millions. It's like 10. So, thoughts, questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with?
I can share something that I'm sitting with, and
Yeah.
I've been sitting with for probably the last week in particular. So this past weekend, like I kind of had a light bulb moment. It was at the end of a heated yoga class, and the teacher, I'm laying there in Shavasana, the last pose where we're just laying, resting, breathing. The teacher had opened the window, so temperature drops like 10, 20 degrees. It should be comfortable. Like ideally, like 30 minutes earlier to that moment, I was fantasizing about that moment, like just waiting to get to that time in my practice. And I realized like how I was still so frustrated. It's like, it's not cold enough. Like I'm not able to relax enough. Like my mind still isn't quiet. And it like hit me that like this idea of always chasing happiness or peace or fulfillment, when really it's not the external factors, it was me.
For sure.
And just controlling what I could. And I think in life, in the greater picture, I'm definitely in this interesting phase where my child just graduated high school and will be going to Berkeley in the fall.
Yay.
And it's crazy because I've like 17 years, I've like planned for this time in my life, to be an empty nester, to get here, to arrive, to just focus on myself and my career and travels and things like that. And it's not all it's cracked up to be. Like there's so much I still want to control externally, and yet I've like arrived.
Yeah.
So what I thought I would have arrived. So it's this like interesting thing that I'm really reckoning with right now. This like idea of reflecting on where I've come from and the journey, but also just, I don't know, like controlling what I can. And this practice helps me do that.
Yeah.
It helps me to really remember to just, all I can do is sit and focus on my breath, regardless of the good, the bad, what's happening externally.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing. First, obviously, congratulations on raising a child and getting a child to college. I don't know, but I'm sure that was not easy. And what kept going through my head, and you eventually said the word actually 3 times, is control. And anyone in this room like to try to control things, right? I mean, for many people, that's what got us here, is this crazy effort to try to control everything and everyone. In raising a child, there's obviously, there's elements of control that are important to keep them safe and healthy and alive and things like that. And as they grow and as they continue to grow, it's going to be challenging in a very different way, because there's this idea of surrendering control that often we are afraid of. And you read all these Zen stories about the moments that the Zen master disciple had this great awakening, and it wasn't necessarily because they were sitting there in meditation or reading, some Buddhist sutra. And this was my initial thought when you started the story about, the window opening and things like that. A lot of these Zen stories are about, the individual walking down the street and like a little leaf falls out of the tree, or a rock hits them on the shoulder, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I get it. Like, this is it. They weren't looking or waiting or planning for the leaf to fall out of the tree, or looking or hoping or planning for the rock to come and hit them on the shoulder. Like, these things just happen. And our ability to be with things as they just happen is a major part of this practice. Because once we learn to stop trying to build this perfect world around us, which you're never going to be able to do anyways, but we spend so much darn time trying. And once we learn to just kind of let the leaves fall and the rocks fall, you know, and the windows open and the air goes through, then we're usually at more peace with things. But letting go of control is really difficult. And this has a lot to do with the Buddhist teachings on attachments, right? And attachment, the practice is going into what's called non-attachment. It doesn't mean that you don't care. It doesn't mean that you don't love, right? It's not unattached. It's not a cutting off of. It's non-attachment. I often hear people say unattached, which is very much almost like a severing, but you're not attached to the outcomes. You are focused on your intention and your action within each moment. And whatever comes of that moment is what comes of that moment, you know? But if you're focused on the end result of when is the window going to open, or, you know, things like that, then we're missing really the path and the practice, which is to just put your intention to each moment and don't attach to what the outcome or result is going to be, which again is very difficult. But non-attachment. Yeah, thank you. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
You mentioned earlier.
I can hear you. You go ahead. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about avoiding suffering.
Yes.
So would you say that suffering is inherently bad, so do you want to avoid it at all costs?
So the question is suffering bad? So the Buddhist teachings are very clear around suffering. It's the first thing he taught. And he said, it exists. That's it. He didn't say it was good or bad. He just said it exists. He said that your entire life, it's the first thing he taught. When that image back there above the exit sign, there's a piece on the wall where he's teaching the Four Noble Truths to his first 5 disciples. And the very first thing he said is, life is filled with dukkha. It means suffering. Now, doesn't mean all of life sucks, right? We have painful, traumatic moments of suffering. We have simple moments of suffering, like, you know, my iPhone doesn't work, or I got the sandwich made improperly, or they didn't put enough pumps of whatever into my latte, right? We experience these things throughout the day. We don't like little things. And then, like I said, we have tremendous trauma and suffering and loss, death, things like that. So he didn't say suffering is good or bad. He said life is filled with it. Your interpretation of it doesn't change what it is. Right? So the practice is to understand the second noble truth, which is the cause of our suffering. And the cause, he said, is greed, anger, and ignorance. We're greedy because we want more. We're never happy with the way things are. We're never happy with the way we look. We're never happy with anything. We're constantly want to change things. We're greedy. We want more. Right? Then the second thing he said is we're angry. We're angry at the way things are. We're angry at what other people do. We're angry at what we've done. There's a constant focus of anger, which causes suffering. And then the third one is ignorance. And this one's really tough because have you been in an argument recently? Yeah.
Debate.
What's that?
Debate.
Debate?
Yeah.
Did it get heated at all, or was this just like a friendly debate?
Friendly.
Friendly debate. Who's been in an argument with someone recently? You're more fun to pick on. All right, I'll pick on you.
Yes, it got heated.
It got heated, right? You went in an argument, right? I'll get you off the hook for a minute. So you got in an argument. When you were in this argument, did you think you were right?
Yes,
What'd the other person think?
they were right.
Wow, fast! I can't imagine there was an argument. 2 people thinking they're both right. I mean, there's a good chance you both were completely wrong. Sometimes we know we're wrong and we're still arguing just because we want to prove that we can win the argument. Right? We're like, yeah, I was wrong, but I'm going to argue with you anyways, just to show you that I can win the argument. So at least I can feel good about something. Right? I know that all too well, trust me. Years of practice with that. So the ignorance is us thinking that we are right. So we suffer because we're greedy, we always want more, we're angry, we don't like the way things are, and we're ignorant because we roam around all day long thinking our views are correct. Thich Nhat Hanh, a great Zen Buddhist master, said all views are wrong. It's a really beautiful teaching. Now for me, when I heard this teaching of all views are wrong, I was like, I don't agree with that. I'm right, you're wrong. And what I've learned from that teaching over the years after the first time I heard it is to understand that I will have my views, but can I not be attached to them, and can I understand that other people have their views, and that every argument in the world exists because of two people, two sides, two countries, two whatever, having different views. And we cling to ours, thinking our view is correct. So this is the cause of the suffering. The third thing he says is there's an end to suffering. Again, it's not about good or bad, but ask yourself, do you like to suffer? Anyone here like to suffer? I mean, I don't. You're going to argue with me, I can tell.
No,
Go ahead.
debate.
You're going to debate with me, sorry.
Yeah, because through suffering comes usually some sort of character gain or growth.
Yeah, but that's a very great philosophical, analytical interpretation. The question wasn't what comes out of it. That's like saying things happen for a reason. That is our very Western way of justifying stuff that happens. Things don't happen for a reason. Things just happen, and then we assign a reason. We suffer, and then we justify it and say, well, I grew from it. The question is not what did you gain from your suffering? The question was, do you enjoy suffering? That's the question. I promise I'm not going to debate with you. But that's the question to ask yourself. Do you enjoy suffering? Most people don't. Most people don't enjoy it. And if you enjoyed suffering, you probably wouldn't be here right now. Most people come into this practice because they're tired of suffering. They're tired of being angry, stressed, anxious, like I said earlier. So the third thing he said is, there's an ending to suffering. That's the third noble truth. Liberation, nirvana, and freedom from suffering. That's the good news. Is that you can suffer less. I don't wake up every day and think, will my suffering end today? I wake up and I think, can I suffer less today than I did yesterday? Because I don't like to suffer, and I don't like others to suffer. I think suffering sucks. Have I learned a lot from it? Have I, gained tremendous insight from my, 46 years of absolute complete ignorance? Absolutely. I've gained a lot, but the suffering wasn't fun. And even worse than that was the suffering that I brought into other people's lives. So the third noble truth is you can suffer less, you can end suffering. And then that's leading you to the fourth noble truth, which is the Eightfold Path. And these are very fundamental core Buddhist teachings. Working on having correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. These are the 8 steps the Buddha taught. It's all on Google. It's all free. It's all really simple and straightforward. And it's really hard to do. But if you put these things into practice, you'll suffer less. And more importantly, or at least equally as important, others will suffer less. Right? I mean, for me, I had to wake up one day, and this was 18 years ago, and say, I'm tired of being a greedy, angry, ignorant fool. I'm tired of being someone who's so wrapped up in myself and so stuck thinking that I'm right and everybody else is wrong. Like, that sucked. Having to continuously play that part and that role was no fun. And then Buddhist teachings kind of smacked me in the face and said, you're not any more important than anybody else. So stop thinking you are. So, life is filled with suffering. Good or bad doesn't matter. It happens. It will always happen in your life. The question is, how do you respond to it? And when you suffer, can you recognize that your actions to the suffering that you're experiencing are quite potentially having tremendous impact on those around you? And when we are so wrapped up in our ego, trying to defend our views, we're hurting people. And very often we're hurting ourselves. And that's the hardest one to get over. So hopefully that gives you more to think about. Other questions, thoughts? Yeah.
Something I always struggled with in my life, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, is not being satisfied. Like, enough is never enough. And I think that's why the whole middle ground approach to me is very intriguing. Because, my father was, very patriarchal, and, it could always be better. This could always be cleaner.
Yep.
That grade can always be higher, And I still carry that with me. It's just like I'm not okay with being okay a lot of times.
Right.
If you have any experience with this,
My entire life.
how have you combated that?
Yeah, I try to repeat tell me your name again, I forget.
I'm James.
James. I try to repeat what people say, so maybe those in the back, but what James is basically saying is his life growing up with his father, nothing was ever good enough, everything could have been better, and always trying to be more and never being okay. And the question was, do I have any experience with that? My entire life. That's what led me to this practice. That coupled with anger, that's my life. And the anger is because nothing I ever did in my own head was good enough. Right? That's what leads. Most people who come into Buddhist practice are coming from about a handful of scenarios. And that is like top 5. Right? The greediness also has to do with ourselves and thinking that we have to be more. Because we've been conditioned to think that from birth. Right? Now, whether we had parents that, it sounds like, your father was that way, whether we had somebody parent or someone influential in our life that was pushing that on us, or we were just kind of like passively part of it. And what I mean by that is, so for example, billions of dollars are spent, I just posted something today, on telling us our whole lives that our shoes should match our belt. And our belt should match our shirt. And that we can wear brown shoes this time of the year, and black shoes this time of the year, and white shoes this time of the year. Right? Every billboard, advertisement, everything is telling us what we should look like, what we should wear, what we should eat, who we should hang out with, what we should believe in. It's like shoved at us our whole life. And that's just for everybody who maybe wasn't raised with someone who was like that. Right? At birth, we are born. Someone's like, that's James. They start calling you James. And next thing you know, you're like little baby James, right? And you can like turn over in a crib or wherever you were. And they're like, that's great, but that's not enough. Turning over isn't enough. Now you got to crawl. And they're all excited you can crawl. Next thing you know, crawling's not enough. We got to walk. Walking's not enough, then we got to run. Now, I'm not suggesting that we, as adults, should just spend our whole lives crawling around. Right? That'd be kind of funny. My point is just to help us realize that it's called conditioning. The conditioning that we have all experienced our entire lives is for real. Whether it was passively, like the little scenario about crawling I just talked about, or very, actively aggressive from a parent, that stuff is there. So we all experience it on different levels. And part of this practice is waking up to understanding that no matter how hard you try to be more than what you are, you're just James. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right? Shunryu Suzuki, a great Zen master, taught in San Francisco, came over from Japan, and one of my favorite quotes is he would say to his students, "You're all perfect exactly how you are. And you all could use a little improvement." Now, most of us don't grow up being told we're perfect how we are. You know, most people aren't sending us through school saying, you know what, just get C's and D's. That'll be good enough. Right? We're always striving for more. So that greed, the first cause of our suffering, right, applies also to ourselves. That we're greedy because we never think we're enough. You know, it's one thing to want to buy more shirts or more iPhones or more whatevers. But at what point in time can we wake up and say, you know what, I need to work on myself a tiny bit? And in fact, most of the stuff that we need to work on ourselves is just about having some love and care for yourself and stop thinking that you have to be what everybody else told you should be. That's really hard to do, to recognize that you are perfect how you are. This, my friend, is not a, you know, I wish I could just be like, yeah, okay, here you are, there you go, you're done. No, it starts with recognizing that this is a major influence and impact on your life, as it is with many of us in this room. And then saying, I'm going to slowly work on cutting through this conditioning. But I wish I had the quick fix, you know. It's a lifelong practice, but you can get there to where you begin to feel that, you know, you're perfect how you are. You know? And anybody else that judges us, that's their mess, not ours. And the crazy part is, especially when it comes to parents, is like, you know, they were screwed up kids themselves too. I didn't mean that you're screwed up, but you know, right? Like parents are just like little kids being influenced just like we're all talking about right now. And then one day they're like, oh my God, I have kids. And I'm supposed to teach them stuff, but they're dealing with their own mess, their entire life's drama, their own childhood, their own upbringing, their own, you know, mess of a life. And now they got to raise a child? That's incredibly difficult. So they're also doing their best. And part of this, again, you didn't bring this up, this isn't just for you, but for anybody, but part of this stuff with this potential resentment or anger, things like that, that we might have towards others for the way they may have done or treated us, is having compassion and kindness and forgiveness for these people in our lives. Because often we can hold some sort of anger towards these people that have made us feel certain ways, when in fact they were doing the best they could with the conditions they had. So part of the healing that you're really asking about potentially lies in some forgiveness, you know, again, without knowing anything, just throw that out there as a possibility. Would some forgiveness help you in a situation like this?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I didn't want to sound too far off base, but yeah. So forgiveness is key. It'll help. Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, thank you. Yeah. Other questions, thoughts, anything? Do one more and I'll wrap up. Yeah.
So, I'm not necessarily new to Buddhism. I discovered it in 2004.
Yeah.
And I practiced, and I was really like, yeah. And then I kind of just let life get me out of the practice, and I didn't make time for it. And I said, you know what? I'm really off balance.
Yeah.
I want to start from the beginning again. One of the beliefs, core beliefs I have with it, is the service of others. When, in your opinion, does the service of others stop and your own mental and emotional well-being take priority?
It's, to use your words, a balance. It really is. It's understanding that what's called the Bodhisattva Practice is to, so the Bodhisattva Vow is that one vows to be reborn life after life until all beings are free from suffering, which is a really beautiful, just think of it from a day-to-day basis, forget rebirth and all that crazy stuff. Just think of it from a day-to-day basis of, I'm going to wake up every day and I'm going to spend my entire life helping other people. That's a really great vow and a really beautiful practice. But if you completely destroy yourself in the process, you can't help anybody. You ever been on an airplane?
Yeah.
Oxygen mask falls. What do they tell you to do?
Put yours on first.
Yours on first, and then the child. Because if you die, you can't help anybody. So there is balance. There's the middle path, which was mentioned earlier. And that really is not something that I or anyone can say. And what's your name?
Benny.
Benny. That's not something that someone can say, Benny, this is exactly where that balance is or where that middle path is. The only one who knows that is you. But, you know, especially being introduced to practice a long time ago and, you know, being familiar with it, you hopefully have, and whether you're new to practice or not, most of us have a pretty good sense of when we are balanced and when we are off balanced. So it's the same thing. Begin to recognize, okay, I'm helping other people and that's great, but yo, I'm a mess right now. That's when you got to call time out and say, I got to help myself a little bit here. So keep an eye on that.
So I guess one of the things too is if I do kind of separate myself from that, I'm worried that I'll be a bad Buddhist. Is that my ego?
Yeah, I mean, don't worry about being a good or bad Buddhist. Don't worry about being a good or bad Christian or Catholic or Muslim or Jewish person or pagan or lack thereof. Just try to be a decent human being, right? The last thing I'll say, and then I'll close, is one of the greatest attachments when people learn about Buddhism they can have is that they're trying to be like the perfect little Buddhist. You know? I mean, there is no such thing as the perfect little Buddhist. There's just the recognition that sometimes we're kind to people. Do y'all know when you're kind to people?
Yeah.
Do y'all know when you're unkind to people? And that's it. You don't need to add, today I was a kind Buddhist, and today I was an unkind Buddhist. That's another label, and you know, we got enough labels and projections we're throwing on ourselves, right? Most people have spent enough of their life critiquing themselves. Don't then begin to learn about Buddhism and then try to compare yourself to like other Buddhists, you know? There's no like levels in this stuff. It's not like I'm a better Buddhist than you, right? Don't use the same things that have been like making ourselves miserable our lives and apply that to Buddhism, meaning don't try to figure this stuff out. Don't try to label it, judge it, philosophize about it. You know, it doesn't matter how smart we are with these things. Can we be kind to ourselves and everybody else or not? Like, that's it. You know? So, does that help?
It does, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a lot of times, especially with Buddhism, which is like really cool and 2,500 years of teachings and all kinds of words in different languages and different looking images and, you know, rays of light shining out of Buddhist foreheads. Like, there's all kinds of really cool stuff out there in Buddhism. But if you read all of that for 6 hours and then you get in your car and the first person cuts you off, you're like honking at them and flip them off, then what good was all that stuff you just read? So be nice to people. That's hard enough. You know? All right, so I'll close on that. I do have one thing, and I don't even know if she's with us tonight. But before we close, so Cynthia, who many of you know, is a dear friend of ours, been around the community a long time, having some challenges in her life, as most people are. It's also her birthday today. And so for personal reasons, she's, you know, not joining us at Temple, but has been joining us on Zoom or YouTube for the last 16 months while we've been closed. And I honestly don't even know if she's joining us tonight or not, but we're going to sing her happy birthday. So we're going to sing happy birthday to Cynthia. And if she's not joining us tonight, I promise you I'm going to send it to her. So she's either crying now already or will be crying when I send it to her later tonight. So we're going to sing happy birthday to Cynthia. All right? So, ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Cynthia. Happy birthday to you. Cynthia, we love you and wish you well. So we'll join palms as we close. We'll do what's called a transfer of merit. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the more than 4 million lives who have been lost during this pandemic over the last 16 months, and to their family and friends who continue to suffer. May all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. All right, a few quick announcements before you all head out there to be kind to every person you encounter the rest of the evening. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 14, 15 years ago, initially downtown for 10 years, to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks or nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. So we do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. So that's you. Thank you for showing up. Every night, typically, we have different practices going on, coming from different Buddhist traditions. Like I said, we did close 16 months ago due to the pandemic. This is just week 3 now that we've been opened on a very limited basis. Currently, our schedule, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, we are here. I do this class Tuesday. Alex does the Metta, loving kindness on Wednesday. Great for forgiveness and stuff like that. And Travis does Thursday night, Dharma Bum Basics and Meditation, also great for forgiveness. And then I do Saturday morning up here as well. Our recovery Sangha, which we've had for about 10 years, anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, or just life, we're all probably addicted to something. That is Sunday morning at 10 a.m. up here, and Tuesday night right now they're meeting downstairs. Everything else we have is still virtual, whether it's on Zoom or YouTube. So some classes are in person, some are only online, and some are both. We've modified things for obvious reasons. For 14, 15 years, we don't track anyone or anything. We don't care who shows up. We don't care who stays. We don't care who goes. We tell people come in with all your madness just as you are and show up. And now for the last 2.5 weeks, we are like tracking you at the door when you enter. But that is so people hopefully here can feel comfortable. So we have limited capacity to half of what normally would be up here, just to keep it as safe as possible and comfortable for those who are showing up. So we appreciate you, sitting in the scattered seats. We appreciate you wearing the masks and just, dealing with us as we tried to open after 16 months. So currently we're also doing Monday through Friday, 8 and 8:30 in the morning. And then it's a silent meditation, 2 25-minute sits. And then the temple closes all day. It used to be open all day, but then the temple closes all day and reopens again in the evening. So I know that's a lot to remember. The website has the schedule. Buddha for You, same thing. Just open Saturday, Sunday, 12 to 3, and then it opens an hour before the evening classes. So other than that, announcement-wise, I think that's all. Stay tuned. Things change daily. We've erred on the tremendous cautious side for obvious reasons, but also just out of tremendous respect and, really a heartfelt message to the people that are truly suffering and have lost lives from this. So it's been a crazy 16 months. I'm just grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to sit here and have these doors open. So thank you all for being here tonight. I wish you well. Please be safe. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.